Man, I've talked to a lot of people on this podcast, scientists, spiritual leaders, skeptics, fighters, monks, you name it. But there's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it's this question that keeps coming back to me. Why are Muslims so deeply respected, even if people don't say it out loud? I'm not talking about political headlines or media nonsense. I'm talking about this deep underlying admiration people have for Muslims. And I think it comes down to something real. It's about how they live, how they move, how grounded they are. Like when I first saw what Muslims do during Ramadan, I was blown away. 30 days of fasting, not just from food, but water too. In a world where people panic if their protein shake is late, these people are chilling through hunger and thirst like spiritual warriors. That takes insane discipline. And they do it every year without whining. They say it connects them to God, clears their mind, purifies the soul. And honestly, when you see someone do that willingly, joyfully, it's impossible not to respect it. It's next level control. You see the way they pray 5 times a day, every single day. You could be in the middle of a business meeting, a party, a battlefield, doesn't matter. When it's time to pray, and they don't care who's watching. That kind of spiritual commitment, that kind of loyalty to something bigger than yourself, that's rare today. Most people can't even commit to a morning routine. And then there's this brotherhood. They have this unspoken connection with each other. You could take 2 Muslims from opposite ends of the world, drop them in a room together, and there's this instant vibe, this respect, this unity. It's like a tribe, but not based on race or status, just belief. And I think that's what makes people admire them. There's no fake surface level bonding. It's deeper. You see them gather in mosques in massive numbers, shoulder to shoulder, rich and poor, young and old, all equal. That's powerful. That's what real unity looks like. In a world where everyone's divided by labels and social media echo chambers, Muslims still stand together. And man, the way they treat family, that hit me hard. They don't play when it comes to family. Your mom is sacred. Your dad is respected. Elders are honored. It's like stepping into an old school world where values still matter. And get this, the Prophet Muhammad literally said that paradise lies at the feet of your mother. That's not just poetic. That's a code. That's a culture that teaches you to love and protect and serve your family like it's your life's mission. How can you not admire that? Especially when the rest of the world is ghosting their parents and chasing attention online. And there's this stoic calm you notice in practicing Muslims. It's hard to explain, but it's like they've surrendered to something greater. Like they believe in destiny, in divine timing, in patience. You throw chaos at them and they respond with alhamdulillah. That means praise be to God. Who does that? Who thanks God even in pain? That's not weakness. That's mental armor. That's warrior level peace. And you look at how they live, no drinking, no drugs, no random hookups, just clean living, clear mind, pure focus. In a world that's addicted to dopamine, these people say no to temptation like it's nothing. That's strength, real strength. People might not admit it, but deep down they respect those who have control. And Muslims don't chase trends. They don't follow the world. They follow faith. Hijab, beard, modesty, they'll wear it even if the world mocks them. That's called not selling your soul. And even if people don't understand it, they admire it because we all want to stand for something. And Muslims, they do. And let's not forget history, man. Islam's been around for 1,400 years. It survived wars, colonization, oppression, and it's still here, stronger than ever. Why? Because it's built on something eternal. It's not marketing, it's not hype, it's real, it speaks to the human soul. And here's what I've noticed, man. The world might fear what it doesn't understand, but deep down, it also respects it. And that's what I think is going on with Muslims. Even when they're misunderstood, misrepresented, or criticized, they don't back down. They just keep living their truth. And in a weird way, that silence, that patience, that resilience, it screams louder than words. It says, we know who we are. We don't need your approval. And that kind of energy, that kind of inner fire, that's the stuff legends are made of. So yeah, maybe people don't say it directly. Maybe the headlines don't show it. But when you look close, when you really watch how Muslims live, you see it. You see the discipline, the honor, the devotion, the family, the loyalty, the peace, the purpose. And that's why in a chaotic world with no anchors, people look at Muslims and go, damn, they've got something real. And whether they say it or not, whether they understand it or not, that's why Muslims are so adored. And here's where it gets even crazier, man. The more you dive into it, the more you realize Muslims aren't just living with discipline and faith, they're walking through a world full of noise, pressure, distraction, temptation, and they still hold the line. Like in today's world, people are selling out everything for convenience. Sell your body, your morals, your attention span for what? A few likes, a viral moment. But these people, Muslims, they've got this deep, ancient software running in them that says, nah, I'm not here for the world's applause. I'm here for something eternal. That kind of clarity, that's like spiritual GPS. And man, it's wild when you meet someone who's really living it. I'm not talking about people who claim to be religious, but don't walk the walk. I mean, those who really embody what they believe. You feel something in their presence. There's a stillness, almost like a fire that doesn't burn out. Like they don't need to argue or convert you. They just live in a way that makes you question your own chaos. That's not just admirable, that's magnetic. And I've sat with imams, Muslim scholars, even average guys with regular jobs who pray 5 times a day and live clean, and they're not arrogant, not preachy, just real. They'll tell you straight up, I'm not perfect, I struggle, but I try for God. And that kind of raw honesty, that humility mixed with strength, that's the stuff that sticks with you. It makes you sit up and go, damn, what am I doing with my time? Because here's the deal. Most people today are spiritually starving. They've got everything, money, success, fame, tech, AI, luxury, and they're still hollow inside. But these Muslims, they've got God. That's their anchor. That's their daily reset. And when you've got that, bro, you can go through hell and still come out peaceful. That's the kind of spiritual armor modern people are craving. They just don't know how to get it. And another thing that blows my mind, how generous they are. Like zakat, this whole idea of giving away a portion of your wealth every single year, no matter what. That's baked into the system. It's not optional. It's not give when you feel like it. It's you earn money, you give some away, period. That kind of system is what keeps communities alive. They feed the poor, support orphans, help refugees, and they do it quietly without flashing it on social media. Because for them, it's not about clout, it's about God. And that sincerity, people feel that. Even non-Muslims recognize it. You don't need to believe in Islam to see that kind of selflessness and go, yeah, that's real. And let's not forget the women, man. You hear all kinds of media noise about Muslim women being oppressed. But when you actually sit down and talk to them, they're some of the most intelligent, articulate, fierce, and spiritually grounded people you'll ever meet. They wear the hijab, not because they're forced, but because it's an act of devotion. It's a choice. It's empowerment that the West doesn't understand because they've defined freedom as nakedness. But these women are saying, no thanks. I define myself by my mind, my values, my soul, not my body. That's next level confidence. That's real feminism, man. And even though they face judgment, discrimination, hate, they keep walking with dignity. With grace. That's strength, bro. Silent, unshakable strength. And you want to talk about love? Go to a Muslim wedding. It's not about drunken chaos or flexing wealth. It's about families uniting, prayers being said, communities coming together to celebrate something sacred. You go to Eid celebrations and you see millions of people across the world dressed in their best, hugging each other, feeding the poor, visiting the sick. It's not just a holiday, it's a wave of humanity. And let me tell you something that hit me hard. When someone dies in the Muslim world, the way they handle it is unlike anything I've seen. The community shows up, the prayers are real, the grief is sacred, and still there's peace. Because they believe death isn't the end. It's a return to the Creator. That kind of perspective gives life so much meaning. And it makes you realize that these people, these Muslims, they live with a purpose that's way bigger than themselves. Every single thing they do, what they eat, how they dress, how they speak, how they spend money, how they raise kids, it's all tied to this higher purpose. That's why they're so grounded. That's why they're not easily manipulated by media or trends. They've got an internal compass. And bro, in a world where everyone's lost and searching for something, that kind of direction, that's a rare superpower. That's why they're adored. Not because the world tells you to love them, but because your soul recognizes something eternal when you see it. And yeah, sure, people can try to twist the narrative. They can point fingers, bring up the extremists, distort the faith. But the truth, the real truth, you can't erase it. Because it's not just written in books. It's written in how these people live. Day after day, year after year, quietly, boldly, faithfully. And honestly, man, if more people spent time with real Muslims in their homes, in their mosques, during their prayers, they'd walk away with a whole new understanding of what strength, peace, and devotion really look like. Because these folks, they're not just believing in God, they're living like they see Him. Every day, every breath. And that's something the world can't fake. That's why they're respected. That's why even when misunderstood, they're never forgotten. Because when you stand for something eternal, you become timeless. And the deeper I look, man, the more I realize this isn't just about religion. It's about a whole mindset, a way of living that the modern world has lost. Muslims didn't just preserve rituals, they preserve rhythm. A rhythm to life that aligns you with something bigger. And that's what blows my mind. Like, you wake up before the sun, not to hustle, not to scroll your phone, but to pray. You stop everything in the middle of the day, work, business, travel, just to bow your head to your creator. Who does that today? Who has that kind of alignment, that kind of self-awareness in a world running 1,000 miles an hour? Muslims do. And that's not just discipline, that's sacred timing. That's recalibrating your soul 5 times a day like clockwork. And bro, that kind of intentional living, it changes you. It rewires your brain. You start seeing things differently. You start detaching from the chaos. That's what most people crave without even knowing it. They think it's about success or dopamine hits, but really, it's about peace. And Muslims are walking around with that peace because they're not looking outward for it. They're looking upward and inward. And man, I'll say this, one of the most impressive things I've seen is how they raise their kids. Like, I've met young Muslim teenagers who speak with more maturity, more respect, more clarity than most adults I know. And it's because from a young age, they're taught about purpose, about patience, about consequences. They memorize scripture. They're taught to serve, to honor, to be kind. And here's the kicker. They do it without feeling like they're missing out. That's powerful, bro. In a generation where kids are drowning in confusion, here's a community raising warriors of character. Not perfect, but principled. And when you think about it, it's no surprise that Islam keeps growing. It's not just a religion, it's a refuge. It's a system that makes sense in a senseless world. And the craziest part, it doesn't need rebranding. It doesn't try to fit into modern trends. It just is. It's unapologetic. And that authenticity, that's what people are drawn to. Because you can feel when something is real. You can feel when someone believes what they say. And Muslims, they believe. You see it in their eyes. You hear it in their voices. They're not faking it for show. It's in their DNA. And even when they mess up, they bounce back. They ask forgiveness. They repent. They keep going. It's not about being perfect. It's about being on the path. That's what people miss. It's not about pretending to be holy. It's about being human with humility. That's why Muslims walk with quiet confidence, because they know they're connected to something greater. And look, I've sat with people who left Islam, people who entered Islam, people who never even knew what it was about until they saw a real Muslim just doing his thing, praying at the airport, helping someone in need, walking with dignity. And they were like, what is that? I want that. Because it speaks to the soul. And we live in a time where the soul is starving for truth, for clarity, for values. And Muslims, they're feeding that hunger, not with hype, not with slogans, but with action, with presence, with real lived out devotion. And let's talk about how they handle pain. Bro, I've seen Muslims lose everything, family, homes, jobs, and still say, Alhamdulillah. Like, what? You thank God when you're suffering. That's insane to most people. But to them, it's faith, it's trust, it's understanding that life isn't random, it's a test. And that perspective shifts everything. It turns grief into growth, pain into purpose. That's not weakness. That's spiritual strength. That's what makes them unbreakable. And it's not just the religious ones. Even cultural Muslims carry that fire. It's in the way they carry themselves, the way they hold loyalty, the way they protect their people. You don't find that everywhere. That kind of community, that sense of, I got your back no matter what, that's rare. And it's something the rest of the world desperately needs. And I'll tell you what else, man. Muslims know how to die. And I know that sounds dark, but think about it. Most people today live like they'll never die. They chase pleasures, they numb pain, they avoid anything that reminds them of mortality. But Muslims, they remember death every day. It's in their prayers. It's in their mindset, not in a morbid way, but in a motivating way. Like, I don't know if I'll wake up tomorrow, so let me live right today. That's a different kind of fire. That's a different kind of focus. And when you live like that, with that kind of urgency and purpose, you don't waste time. You don't play games. You live full. and you die empty. That's why they're adored, man. Because in a world full of noise, they move with silence. In a world full of fakeness, they move with authenticity. In a world full of fear, they move with faith. And it doesn't mean they don't have flaws. Of course they do, but their foundation, it's solid, it's divine. And people feel that, even if they don't say it, even if they don't understand it. There's a reason you can't erase Islam. You can't cancel Muslims, because they're not just connected to history, they're connected to eternity. And that kind of connection, that's something the world secretly admires, even if it pretends not to. That's why Muslims are so deeply, silently, and profoundly adored. And honestly, man, when you really sit with it, when you look beyond the surface, you realize that Islam isn't just a set of rules or rituals. It's a way of anchoring the soul in a world that's constantly trying to rip it apart. Muslims aren't out here flexing enlightenment on Instagram or turning spirituality into some marketplace. Nah, they're living it quietly, consistently, day after day, moment after moment, without needing approval, without needing to prove anything. And that's exactly what makes it powerful, because think about it. How many people do you meet who are truly consistent anymore? We live in a world where values shift depending on what's trending. One minute people believe in something, the next they abandon it because the algorithm changed. But Muslims, they're holding the line. In their speech, in their food, in their relationships, in how they walk, how they raise their kids, how they do business, it's all infused with faith. And that kind of consistency, that kind of long-term integrity, it's rare, and people notice. Even if they don't talk about it, even if they act like they don't care, deep down they're watching. They're seeing it people who haven't lost themselves. And that's attractive, man. That's magnetic. Because in a time where everybody's lost in the fog, people are drawn to anyone who's walking with clarity. And I've got to say, man, when you walk through a Muslim neighborhood, there's a certain vibe, like a sense of community that's alive. People greet each other with warmth. They look out for one another. There's this deeply embedded sense of responsibility. It's not just about you, it's about us. And that tribal connection, man, it's missing from so many parts of modern life, and I think people miss it. We've replaced real brotherhood with online followers. We've swapped community for comment sections, and it's left people cold. But Muslims, they still show up for each other, for strangers, for anyone in need. That kind of human loyalty, it's sacred. And then there's the humility. Bro, I've sat with Muslim scholars who have memorized thousands of pages of scripture, who have deep understanding of philosophy, medicine, history, and they speak like they're students, not masters. They say all knowledge belongs to God. That's humility. Real humility, not performative modesty, not the fake kind where you pretend to be humble for likes. I mean, genuine surrender to a higher intelligence. That's something you don't see every day. And let's not ignore this either. Muslims are resilient as hell. Go around the world. Palestine, Syria, Sudan, Kashmir, Uyghurs in China, you name it. Oppression, war, poverty, displacement. And still they pray. Still they smile. Still they say, God is with us. That's not fantasy. That's fire. That's a flame that doesn't go out. And we admire that even when we don't understand it. Because that kind of resilience, it's inspiring. It makes you question your own comfort, your own softness. Like, what excuse do I have to complain about Wi-Fi when this mother in Gaza is feeding her kids in the middle of rubble with faith in her eyes? That's the kind of perspective that hits you in the chest. That's the kind of example that redefines strength. And I think deep down, that's why people adore Muslims, because they remind us of what we've lost, of what we've abandoned in the name of progress. In the chase for comfort and distraction, we forgot how to sit still, how to submit, how to trust. But Muslims, they didn't forget. They held on through centuries, through colonization, through propaganda, through attempts to erase their identity. And not only did they survive, they're thriving. Their masjids are full, their children know the roots, their women walk proud, their men carry honor, and they're not arrogant about it. They're just steady. That steadiness, that patience, that grace under fire, that's why people can't look away. Even if they hate them, they're obsessed. Even if they mock them, they're intrigued. Because you can't ignore light in a dark room. And that's what Islam is to many people, a light, not a perfect one, not one without mistakes or complexity, but a light that doesn't flicker with the wind, a light that holds. That's rare. That's why people admire them. And you know what else? Muslims believe that every action, no matter how small, matters. That intention is everything. that even smiling at someone is charity, that feeding a cat is worship, that walking away from gossip is strength, that controlling your anger is a battle worth winning. That level of awareness, that level of purpose, it makes every moment sacred. And that makes life feel alive, full, rich. And again, most people don't even realize how empty they've become until they're standing next to someone who's truly full. That's why a lot of people who convert to Islam say it felt like coming home, not to a place, but to their soul. Because Islam isn't about changing who you are. It's about reconnecting to who you've always been. The world confuses freedom with chaos, but Islam brings order, not chains, clarity. And when you've lived long enough in the fog, clarity is a gift. That's what Muslims carry, and that's what we admire. Not always with words, sometimes just with silence. With that long stare that says, they've got something I don't understand, but I know it's real. And that realness, that authenticity, that depth, that's why no matter how much noise surrounds them, Muslims remain centered. Not because they're better than anyone else, but because they remember something the world forgot. That we're not just flesh and bone, we're soul, we're spirit. And when that part is aligned, the rest follows. That's why they're adored. Not because of popularity, not because of power, but because truth has a gravity to it. And no matter who you are, when you come close to it, you feel the pull. And the longer I sit with it, man, the more I realize this isn't just about admiration or cultural curiosity or intellectual respect. It's deeper. It's soul-level recognition. Because when you strip away the headlines, strip away the politics, the stereotypes, the debates, you're left staring at something eternal, something that doesn't flinch, something that doesn't try to impress. And that's what Islam feels like when you really look at it. It doesn't beg for validation. It doesn't chase acceptance. It just stands still like a mountain. And people don't always know how to process that kind of stillness, that kind of power, because we're living in a world that's constantly changing its identity. One day we're this, the next day we're that. But Muslims, they know who they are, not because they made it up, but because it was handed to them, revealed, preserved, protected. And you can feel the weight of that history in the way they speak, the way they walk, the way they pray. It's not arrogance, it's inheritance. And bro, that hits different. That stability, that grounding, it makes you look at your own life and wonder what the hell you've been chasing. You start asking questions, big ones, like what do I actually believe? What am I living for? What happens when I die? And Islam doesn't run from those questions. It runs into them head first with clarity, with answers that don't try to sedate you, but awaken you. And that's rare because most systems today, they don't want you awake. They want you distracted, consuming, scrolling, dopamine chasing. But Islam wants you present, accountable, awake. That's heavy. That's why it scares people. Because when you wake up to truth, you have to let go of illusions. And that's hard. That's uncomfortable. But that's also the beginning of freedom. And Muslims walk in that freedom every day, even when they're oppressed, even when they're misjudged, even when they're slandered, because their freedom doesn't come from the world. It comes from submission. And that right there, that's the paradox that shocks people. How can submission be freedom? But it is, because when you submit to the Creator, you're no longer a slave to creation. You're not chasing people's opinions. You're not lost in trends. You're rooted. And that kind of liberation, man, it glows. You can see it in their eyes, especially in the elders. I've sat with old Muslim men and women who've lived hard lives, refugees, workers, immigrants, and they've got this look in their eyes like peace, not the fake kind. Not the temporary kind. I'm talking about the kind of peace that says, I've seen pain, I've buried loved ones, I've struggled, but I'm still here. And I'm good because I know where I'm going. That's powerful. That's rare. That's sacred. And it's not just the elders. I've seen young Muslims, 18, 19 years old, talk about death, about God, about purpose, like philosophers, but not in a detached academic way, in a real way, in a lived way. And it makes you wonder, how did they get that wisdom so young? And the answer is, they're raised on it. Their bedtime stories are about prophets, not cartoons. Their heroes are people of prayer, not influencers. Their rituals are acts of remembrance, not just routine. It shapes them. It sharpens them. And that's something we've lost. We've become a generation of comfort addicts. We avoid pain. We avoid silence. But Muslims, they walk into silence. They sit with pain, and they let it purify them. That's why their suffering doesn't break them. It builds them. And man, there's something else that always gets me. The way Muslims deal with success. Because look, we've all seen people win big money, fame, power. and lose themselves in the process. But a practicing Muslim, you'll hear them say mashallah when things go right. You'll hear them say astaghfirullah when they mess up. It's this constant check-in with something higher. This awareness that nothing is truly yours, that it all belongs to the one who gave it. And that humility, it's beautiful, it's grounding, it's rare, especially in a world that tells you to worship yourself. But Muslims don't worship themselves. They worship the one who made them. And in that act, they find clarity, they find peace, they find direction. And bro, you feel that. Even if you don't understand the language, even if you don't follow the rituals, you feel that energy, that alignment, that serenity. And you can't fake that. You can't manufacture that. It comes from something real. And that's why I think people deep down, maybe even subconsciously, are drawn to Muslims because they represent something we all crave. Stability, meaning, discipline, faith, family, community, purpose. These aren't just words. These are pillars. And Muslims are walking on them every single day through hardship, through joy, through everything in between. And yeah, they're not perfect. None of us are, but they're trying and they're doing it together, not alone, not isolated, together. And that's why no matter how much the world tries to distract, to distort, to divide, Islam keeps rising, not because of marketing, not because of media, but because it speaks to the soul. And when the soul hears truth, it listens, even if the mind resists, even if society mocks, even if fear clouds the heart, the soul still knows. And that knowing, that's what you feel when you meet a real Muslim. That's why they're respected. That's why they're loved. That's why even when misunderstood, they are quietly, deeply, universally adored.